The stars looked cold through the broken window of the defense station. Kate Morrison floated in the darkness, her breathing loud inside her helmet. Everything was silent now. The battle was over. Humanity had lost. She pushed herself through the corridor, past bodies frozen in the vacuum of space. These were her friends, people she had eaten breakfast with just this morning. Now, they were gone. The Krell had come fast and hit hard. 3 human battle groups destroyed in less than 4 hours. The aliens were efficient killers. Kate's oxygen meter blinked red in the corner of her vision. 3 hours left, maybe 4 if she stayed calm. Not that it mattered much. The station was dead. The ships were destroyed. The rescue vessels were days away, and the Krell would be back to finish the job before then. She had been lucky. When the attack started, she was deep in the engineering section, checking power relays. A plasma blast had hit the station's hull above her, and the entire section collapsed. She got trapped in a sealed compartment with emergency oxygen. By the time she cut her way out with a plasma torch, everyone else was dead. The emergency beacon had led her here, to the reactor room. It was the only place on the station still running on backup power. The lights flickered as she entered, casting strange shadows on the walls. In the center of the room sat a large metal container, about the size of a small cargo pod. Warning labels covered its surface in bright yellow and red. Kate recognized it immediately. It was the station's emergency fusion core, pulled from the reactor and modified. Commander Carl Hughes had talked about it once. Late at night, in the mess hall. A last resort weapon. A bomb that could take out an entire fleet if detonated at close range. They had hoped never to use it. A data pad floated near the control panel. Kate grabbed it and pressed play. The screen flickered, and Commander Hughes appeared. His face was streaked with blood, and alarms screamed behind him. But his voice was steady and calm. If you're watching this, we're dead. The Krell hit us harder than we expected. They're gathering their fleet at coordinates 447889 Alpha, about 40 kilometers from here. Intelligence says they're preparing for the final push to Earth. Every carrier, every battleship, everything they have. Hughes paused and looked directly at the camera. We've armed the fusion core. It's crude, but it'll work. Enough explosive power to wipe out anything within 50 kilometers. The problem is the remote trigger is damaged. Someone needs to get this device to those coordinates and activate it manually. The startup sequence takes 5 minutes. You'll need to be within 5 kilometers of their fleet for maximum effect. Kate's stomach dropped. 5 kilometers. That was practically inside their formation, and a 5-minute delay meant no time to escape. This was a suicide mission. I know what I'm asking, Hughes continued. But if someone doesn't do this, Earth falls. Every human world falls. The Krell don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They erase entire species. We're the only ones who can stop them now. If you're hearing this message, you're the last hope humanity has. The recording ended. Kate stared at the device, her mind racing. 40 kilometers through a debris field filled with destroyed ships and dead bodies. No working ship, no weapons, just a broken EVA suit and a bomb. The Krell would have patrols everywhere. They would be celebrating their victory, picking through the wreckage for survivors to kill. She checked her suit's thrusters. The gauge showed 15% power, barely enough for a few short bursts. She would have to push off debris manually, using the wreckage as stepping stones through space. And she would have to bring the bomb with her. Kate moved to the device and examined the manual controls. The arming mechanism was straightforward. 5 switches in sequence, then a timer. Once activated, nothing could stop it. 5 minutes later, it would explode with the force of a small star. She found a magnetic tether cable in a storage locker and attached it to the device. The cable was meant for moving cargo pods during station repairs. It would have to work for moving a nuclear bomb through a war zone. Kate took a deep breath and began disconnecting the clamps holding the device in place. Her hands shook slightly, but she forced them steady. This was happening. She was really doing this. One human against an alien armada. No weapons. No backup. No chance of survival. But what choice did she have? Earth needed time. The colonies needed time. Humanity needed someone to stand up and hit back, even if it meant dying in the process. Even if no one would ever know her name, even if this was a one-way trip into the void. The last clamp released, and the device floated free. Kate grabbed the tether and pulled it toward the airlock. The station's outer hull was torn open in a dozen places. She could exit anywhere. Thanks for watching. The next time, she chose a breach that faced away from the Krell fleet position. No point in advertising her presence. As she pushed through the torn metal into open space, the first kilometer took Kate almost an hour. Her suit thrusters died after 3 bursts, leaving her to push off debris manually. Each jump required careful calculation. Too much force, and she would tumble out of control. Too little, and she would drift aimlessly, wasting precious time and oxygen. The nuclear device followed behind her like a silent companion, connected by the magnetic tether. It was heavy, even in zero gravity. The mass made every movement difficult. Every course correction became a struggle. But Kate kept moving forward, one piece of wreckage to the next. Bodies floated everywhere. Some were intact, frozen in the moment of death. Others were torn apart by weapons, fire, or explosive decompression. Kate tried not to look at their faces, but it was impossible. She recognized too many of them. Lieutenant Danny Garcia drifted past, still strapped into his fighter pilot seat. His helmet was cracked, his eyes open and staring. Kate had played poker with him last week. He had shown her pictures of his daughter back on Earth. The little girl was 7 years old. She would never see her father again. Kate pushed the thought away and kept moving. Grief was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. She needed to focus on the mission. Get the bomb to the Krell fleet. Arm it. Set it off. Everything else was secondary. A proximity alarm beeped in her helmet. Kate immediately killed her suit's power signature and pressed herself against a broken bulkhead. She held her breath, watching as 3 Krell fighters swept overhead. Their tri-wing design was distinctive, elegant even, beautiful killing machines. The aliens were scanning the debris field, looking for survivors. Kate had heard stories about what the Krell did to prisoners. They didn't believe in mercy. To them, leaving an enemy alive was a sign of weakness. They would rather kill every last human than risk one escaping to warn others. The fighters passed within 50 meters of her position. Their sensors swept over her hiding spot, but detected nothing. The bomb's shielding kept its reactor core hidden, and Kate's powered-down suit looked like just another piece of debris. The Krell moved on, continuing their patrol pattern. Kate waited 5 full minutes before reactivating her suit. The oxygen gauge now showed 2 hours and 30 minutes remaining. She was using air, faster than expected. The manual pushes required more physical effort, which meant more breathing. She needed to find a better way to travel. 28 kilometers still to go. At this rate, she would run out of oxygen before reaching the Krell fleet. Kate looked around the debris field, searching for anything useful. Most of the ships were too damaged. Their systems were offline, their supplies scattered through space. Then she saw it. A section of the carrier, Washington, still mostly intact. The launch bay was exposed to vacuum, but the support structures looked stable. Kate pushed toward it, dragging the bomb behind her. Inside the bay, she found what she needed. Emergency supply lockers lined the walls, meant to help stranded pilots survive until rescue. Kate pried open the nearest locker and found emergency rations, medical supplies, and most importantly, a spare oxygen tank. She disconnected her nearly empty tank and replaced it with the fresh one. The gauge jumped to 3 hours. Better. Not great, but better. Kate continued searching the bay. moving from locker to locker. In the third locker, she hit the jackpot, a complete emergency thruster pack, designed for spacewalk repairs. It was still fully charged, with enough fuel for sustained flight. Kate pulled it from the locker and examined it carefully. The pack was attached to a pilot's suit, still worn by its owner, Commander Lisa Hayes. Kate recognized her from briefings. She had commanded the Washington's fighter wing. According to the reports, Hayes had launched every fighter she had to buy time for civilian transports to escape. She had stayed at her post until the carrier was destroyed, coordinating the defense even as the ship fell apart around her. Kate carefully removed the thruster pack from Hayes's suit. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll make it count." She attached the pack to the bomb's cargo harness, securing it with every strap and clip she could find. The device was heavy, but the thruster pack was designed to move equipment much larger than this. It would work. Kate activated the thrusters with a short test burst. The bomb moved smoothly forward, responding to her controls. She could make better time now. The Krell position was 18 kilometers away. With the thruster pack, she could cover that distance in under 2 hours. She left the Washington's Bay and continued her journey. The debris field grew thicker as she approached the main battle site. Here, the human fleet had made its last stand. Dozens of ships clustered together, their hulls torn open, their weapons still pointed at the enemy. Kate navigated through the graveyard carefully. Some of the ship reactors were still critical, ready to explode at any disturbance. Other hulls contained unexploded missiles or leaking fuel. One wrong move could kill her before the Krell ever knew she existed. She passed the destroyer Defiance, its name still visible on the hull despite the damage. The ship had been cut in half by plasma fire, but its forward weapons were still charged. Kate could see the targeting computers still active, still trying to track enemies that had long since left. The crew had fought until the very end. Every station was manned. Every weapon had been fired until it melted. These people had known they were going to die, but they had fought anyway. They had bought time for others to escape. They had made the Krell pay for every inch of space. Kate felt a surge of anger. The Krell thought they had won. They thought humanity was beaten. They were celebrating their victory, planning the invasion of Earth, dividing up human worlds like prizes. They were wrong. Humanity wasn't beaten. One Hugh the Krell fleet filled Kate's vision now. Ships stretched as far as she could see, organized in perfect military formation. Carriers the size of cities sat at the center, surrounded by rings of battleships and destroyers. Fighter patrols moved in precise patterns, scanning for threats that no longer existed. Kate drifted at the edge of the debris field, studying the enemy formation. She needed to find a way inside their perimeter without triggering alarms. The Krell were arrogant, but they weren't stupid. Their sensors would detect any active power signature, any unusual movement, anything that looked like a threat. She needed to be invisible. Just another piece of floating debris in a field full of wreckage. Kate examined her suit and the bomb, looking for anything that might give her away. The thruster pack was the biggest problem. Its emissions would show up on scanners immediately. Kate made a decision. She would use the thrusters to get within 10 kilometers, then shut them down completely. The final approach would be manual, drifting on momentum alone. Slower, but safer. The Krell wouldn't notice a piece of debris floating toward them. They had destroyed so many human ships that wreckage was everywhere. She scraped coating from destroyed hull plating and smeared it over her suit and the bomb. The reflective material would help her blend in with the background, making visual detection almost impossible. To any observer, she would look like twisted metal, not a human on a suicide mission. Kate activated the thrusters and began her approach. She kept her speed low, matching the drift rate of the surrounding debris. The bomb followed behind her. Silent and patient, they moved through the wreckage field like ghosts, invisible and deadly. The Krell communications channels were active. Kate listened as she traveled, hearing the aliens coordinate their final preparations. They spoke in their own language, but her suit's translator converted the words to English. What she heard made her blood run cold. Earth defense grid analysis complete. We will overwhelm them in the first wave. Estimated human casualties: 4 billion in the first hour. Total extinction within 72 hours. Civilian evacuation routes have been identified and blocked. No transports will escape. No colony will survive. This species ends today. This species. Monument construction plans approved. We will build our greatest victory marker from the bones of their capital city. Future generations will know that the Krell cannot be defied. Kate's hands tightened on the controls. These creatures spoke about genocide like it was a building project. They discussed the death of billions with the same tone someone might use to talk about lunch. They felt no remorse, no hesitation, no doubt. They were going to learn about regret very soon. 9 kilometers from the fleet. Kate shut down the thrusters and killed all power to her suit except life support. She and the bomb began drifting on momentum alone, carried forward by the velocity she had built up. To any scanner, they were now completely passive objects. Dead metal in space. A patrol of Krell fighters swept past, close enough that Kate could see the pilots inside their cockpits. They looked relaxed, almost bored. Their hunt for survivors had found nothing. All the humans were dead. The war was over. They had won. One of the pilots was drinking something, a celebration already underway. Another was checking a data pad, probably reviewing the attack plans for Earth. A third was laughing at something, sharing a joke with his wingman. They were so confident, so certain of their victory. Kate watched them pass and continued her silent drift toward the fleet. 7 kilometers. The massive Krell command carrier was visible now, its hull covered in weapons and shield generators. That ship coordinated the entire fleet. Destroy it, and the rest would fall into chaos. 6 kilometers. Kate could see individual crew members through the viewports now. Krell officers moving through corridors, preparing for the final jump to Earth. They looked eager, hungry for the conquest to come. 5 kilometers. Kate was passing through the outer debris field now, surrounded by the remains of human ships. A destroyer hull drifted past, its name burned away by weapons fire. Bodies floated nearby, frozen in death. The Krell had been thorough. Nothing human had survived their attack, except one. 4 kilometers. Kate began positioning herself behind a large piece of wreckage. A section of hull from the carrier. Washington. It was big enough to hide her and the bomb, drifting on a trajectory that would take it deeper into the Krell formation. Perfect cover for the final approach. 3 kilometers. This was as far as she could go without crossing into their active defense perimeter. Automated weapons systems would target anything that came closer. Kate needed to release the bomb here and let it drift the rest of the way on its own momentum. She checked the bomb's trajectory one last time. The math had to be perfect. Too high, and it would drift over the fleet. Too low, and it would pass underneath. She needed it to drift right into the heart of their formation, as close to the command carrier as possible. Kate made a final adjustment, giving the bomb a gentle push. It separated from her tether and began drifting forward, silent and deadly. To the Krell, it would look like just another piece of debris, drawn in by the gravity wells of their massive ships. 2.5 kilometers. The bomb drifted past the outer defense perimeter. No alarm sounded. No weapons activated. The Krell sensors saw it as wreckage. Nothing more. It continued forward, heading toward the command carrier at the center of the formation. 2 kilometers. Kate pulled herself completely behind the Washington's hull section, using it as a shield. She couldn't be visible when the bomb went off. The explosion would be massive, and she was already too close to the blast radius. This piece of hull was the only thing that might protect her from the initial shockwave. 1.5 kilometers. The bomb was deep inside the fleet now, drifting between capital ships. Krell crew members probably saw it on their screens, just another piece of debris from the battle. They ignored it and continued their preparations for Earth. 1 kilometer. Kate reached for the bomb's remote arming mechanism. It was short-range only, designed to work within 2 kilometers. She had tested it 3 times during the journey. It had worked perfectly each time. It had to work, now. Her finger hovered over the activation button. Once she pressed it, there would be no turning back. 5 minutes. Until detonation. 5 minutes for the Krell to notice something was wrong. 5 minutes for them to scan the debris and realize they had let a nuclear weapon drift into the heart of their fleet. Kate thought about Earth. About the mountains of Colorado. About the billions of people who would die if she failed. About Commander Hughes and his final message. About Danny Garcia and his daughter. About Lisa Hayes and her sacrifice. She thought about humanity and what it meant to never surrender. To fight even when defeat seemed certain. To hit back even when victory seemed impossible. The Krell had made a mistake. They had assumed humans would break. They were wrong. Kate pressed the button. Deep inside the bomb, systems activated, switches engaged in sequence. The fusion core began its startup cycle. The timer appeared on Kate's display. 5 minutes counting down, 4 minutes 55 seconds. The bomb continued drifting toward the command carrier. Invisible and ignored. 4 minutes 30 seconds. A Krell patrol noticed the object, began moving to investigate. 2 minutes. The Krell fleet erupted into chaos. Ships began moving, trying to clear the blast radius, but they were packed too tightly together. The command carrier couldn't maneuver without colliding with support vessels. The battleships blocked each other's escape routes. Their perfect formation had become a trap. 1 minute 30 seconds. More fighters swarmed the bomb, pouring weapons fire into it. The device's outer casing began to glow from the heat, but the core was protected, shielded by layers of reinforced metal and energy barriers. Nothing short of a direct hit from a capital ship weapon could stop it now. 1 minute. The command carrier's massive engines fired, trying to create distance. But the ship was too large, too slow. It moved like a mountain, trying to run. The bomb drifted closer, now less than half a kilometer from the carrier's hull. 45 seconds. Kate pressed herself against the Washington's hull section, securing every strap and tether she could find. The blast wave would be massive. Even with the hull as a shield, she might not survive. But she had done her job. The bomb was in position. Earth would be safe. 30 seconds. Krell escape pods began launching from ships throughout the fleet. Thousands of small craft scattered in every direction. Desperate aliens abandoning their vessels. They knew what was coming. They knew they couldn't stop it. 15 seconds. The bomb was directly beneath the command carrier now, positioned perfectly. Kate could see Krell crew members through the viewports. Their faces twisted in fear. They were running, scrambling for escape routes that didn't exist. 10 seconds. The fleet's communications channels filled with screaming. Orders contradicted orders. Ships collided as they tried to flee. The organized military formation dissolved into panic. 5 seconds. Kate closed her eyes and thought of home. 0. The nuclear device detonated with the force of a collapsing star. The initial blast vaporized everything within 5 kilometers instantly. The command carrier simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, massive and imposing. The next moment, there was only light. The explosion expanded in a perfect sphere, a miniature sun born in the darkness of space. 6 support vessels disappeared. 14 fighter squadrons evaporated. 90,000 Krell died in the first microsecond. Kate felt the shockwave hit her hull section like a physical blow. The metal groaned and twisted, nearly torn apart by the force. She held on as the debris field around her exploded into motion. Pieces of destroyed ships flew past at incredible speeds, turned into projectiles by the blast. The light was blinding even through her closed eyelids. Kate's suit sensors overloaded. Alarms screaming warnings about radiation levels. The temperature gauge spiked into the red zone. Her shields struggled to protect her from the heat. Then came the electromagnetic pulse. It swept through the Krell fleet like an invisible wave, shutting down every system it touched. Ship reactors went offline. Shield generators failed. Weapons systems died. The entire fleet went dark in an instant. Disabled and helpless, the Krell vessels became targets for their own debris. Pieces of the vaporized command carrier, traveling at relativistic speeds, tore through hull after hull. Ships that had survived the initial blast were shredded by the fragments of their own command structure. Secondary explosions began as disabled ships collided with each other. Fusion reactors overloaded and detonated. Fuel tanks ruptured and ignited. Ammunition magazines cooked off. The cascade of destruction spread through the fleet like a plague, each explosion triggering more. Kate opened her eyes to see a vision of hell. The Krell Armada, so powerful just minutes ago, was dying. Ships tumbled through space, their hulls breached, their crews dead or dying. The perfect military formation had become a debris field larger than the one humanity had created. Her suit's sensors slowly came back online, showing the extent of the damage. Of the 200 ships that had been here, fewer than 40 remained even partially intact. All were damaged. Most were venting atmosphere, their crews evacuating in whatever escape pods still functioned. The command structure was completely destroyed. Without their flagship and their admiral, the survivors had no coordination, no orders, no purpose. Kate watched as the remaining Krell ships began to flee. They scattered in every direction, desperate to escape. Some limped away on damaged engines, others drifted helplessly, their power systems too damaged to function. A few tried to regroup, but without leadership, they quickly gave up and ran. The Krell communications channels were chaos. Voices screamed in terror and confusion. Orders were shouted and ignored. Ships reported casualties in the thousands, damage beyond repair, systems failing across the board. Some captains were calling for retreat. Others were calling for help that would never come. Kate checked her own status. Her suit was damaged but functional. Radiation levels were high but not immediately lethal. Her oxygen supply showed 18 minutes remaining. The explosion had used up more air than she expected. Fear and adrenaline had made her breathe faster during the countdown. 18 minutes wasn't enough to reach any human outpost. The nearest station was hours away. Her suit's thrusters were destroyed by the shockwave, leaving her unable to maneuver. She was drifting now, at the mercy of physics and chance. Kate had known this would be a one-way mission. Commander Hughes had made that clear. Someone had to deliver the bomb. Someone had to make sure it detonated. That someone had been her. She had accepted it, made her peace with it, but she had won. That was what mattered. The Krell Armada was destroyed. Earth was safe. Humanity would survive. The cost had been high, but victory had been achieved. Kate looked at Earth's direction, 60 light-years away through the darkness. Her home was safe now. Her species would live. The Krell had learned that humanity couldn't be beaten, not by force, not by numbers, not by superior technology. Humans fought back. Always. She opened a communication channel on the emergency frequency. It would take hours for the signal to reach any human ship, but she needed to send it anyway. Someone needed to know what had happened here. This is Lieutenant Kate Morrison of the Terran Defense Station Horizon's Edge. Mission accomplished. The Krell Armada at coordinates 447889 Alpha has been neutralized. Repeat. The threat has been eliminated. Earth is safe. Kate paused, watching a damaged Krell battle. 5 minutes of oxygen remained. Kate Morrison drifted in the darkness, her body exhausted, her mission complete. She had accepted death as the price of victory. Earth was safe. Humanity would survive. That was enough. The oxygen meter continued its countdown. 4 minutes. 3. Kate's breathing slowed as she tried to conserve what little air remained. Her thoughts drifted to memories of home. Omteen. Thermater. Enthard. Meinen. Enthard. The mountains of Colorado. The smell of pine trees after rain. Her mother's kitchen on Sunday mornings. 2 minutes. Kate's vision began to blur. Her fingers felt numb. The cold of space was seeping through her damaged suit, and she no longer had the energy to shiver. This was it. The end. She had done her duty. 1 minute. Kate closed her eyes and waited for the darkness to take her, but something was wrong. The oxygen meter showed 0, but she was still breathing. Air was still flowing into her helmet. Confused, Kate forced her eyes open and checked her suit's displays. The tanks were empty, completely empty. There should be no air at all. Then she saw it. A small alert icon blinking in the corner of her screen. Suit breach detected. A leak near her helmet collar. But instead of losing air, her suit was somehow gaining it. The pressure gauge was holding steady, even rising slightly. Kate looked around, trying to understand what was happening. Her suit had drifted against a piece of hull plating from a destroyed ship. The leak in her collar was pressed directly against a torn section of the hull, and from that section, gas was slowly venting. Kate accessed her suit's atmospheric analyzer. The gas composition appeared on her screen. Oxygen-rich, nitrogen-balance, trace elements, breathable air. But how? Why was a destroyed ship venting breathable atmosphere weeks after the battle? She examined the hull section more carefully. It was from the deep interior of a ship, probably a crew quarters or medical bay. Ships carried backup life support systems throughout their structure. Redundant systems that could sustain crew even if main power failed. This section must have remained pressurized, sealed off from the rest of the destroyed vessel. The section was slowly depressurizing now, venting its precious air into space through the torn metal. And Kate's suit, by pure chance, was positioned perfectly to capture that escaping air. The leak that should have killed her was instead saving her life. The odds were astronomical. 1 in a million. 1 in a billion. Kate had to be in exactly the right position, at exactly the right angle, for this to work. Move a centimeter in any direction, and the air would miss her suit entirely. But here she was, breathing air that should have been lost to space. Alive when she should have been dead. The universe, it seemed, wasn't ready to let her go. Kate checked her position relative to the hull section. The tether connecting her to the Washington's wreckage had tangled around a support strut, holding her firmly in place. She wasn't drifting away. The air would continue to flow into her suit as long as the hull section had pressure remaining. How long would that be? Kate ran the calculations. The hull section was small, maybe 30 cubic meters of volume. At the current leak rate, it would take weeks to fully depressurize. Weeks of air, weeks of life, but Kate was exhausted. Her body had been through trauma. The radiation exposure, the stress of the mission, the certainty of death. She felt herself fading, consciousness slipping away despite the oxygen flowing into her suit. She tried to stay awake, tried to send another message, tried to do something, anything, to increase her chances of rescue. But her body refused to cooperate. The darkness took her, pulling her down into unconsciousness. Kate Morrison drifted in the void, suspended between life and death, kept alive by a 1,000,000 to 1 chance that defied all logic. 3 weeks later, the rescue ship Phoenix arrived at the coordinates Kate had transmitted. Captain Nicole Henderson stood on the bridge, staring at the massive debris field on her screens. The reports from Earth had been clear. Lieutenant Kate Morrison had single-handedly destroyed the Krell Armada, but no one expected to find her alive. "Begin search pattern," Henderson ordered. "Look for any intact suit, beacons, or emergency signals." The search took hours. The debris field was enormous, filled with the remains of both human and Krell ships. Millions of pieces of wreckage, thousands of bodies, and somewhere in that chaos, maybe one living human. Lieutenant Alex Turner, The Phoenix's chief medical officer sat at his scanner station, examining every object larger than a meter. Most were just twisted metal. Some were bodies, frozen and dead. He was about to suggest they expand the search radius when his screen flickered. Wait. I'm getting something. Faint heat signature. Could be a functioning suit, or just a reactor cooling down. It's weak, but it's there. Henderson leaned over his shoulder. Coordinates? Sending them to navigation now. Distance 300 kilometers. We can be there in 15 minutes. The Phoenix changed course, its engines pushing it toward the signal source. As they approached, the heat signature resolved into something recognizable. A figure in an EVA suit, drifting near a section of hull plating. The suit's beacon was dead, its power systems offline. But somehow, impossibly, the life signs monitor showed a pulse. Get a recovery team out there now, Henderson ordered. Full medical support. If she's alive, I want her kept that way. The recovery team moved fast. 6 crew members in EVA suits launched from the Phoenix's airlock, carrying medical equipment and a rescue stretcher. They reached Kate's position in minutes. Suits damaged but intact, one of them reported. Life support shows 0 power, 0 oxygen. She shouldn't be alive, but her vital signs are weak but present. Heart rate 40 beats per minute. Temperature critically low. How is this possible? They carefully disconnected Kate from the hull section and brought her back to the Phoenix. The moment Kate's suit entered the pressurized environment, he began working. Get her out of that suit. Carefully. I need to know why she's still breathing. Kate Morrison woke up 2 days after the rescue. Her first sensation was warmth. Real warmth, not the artificial heat of a damaged EVA suit. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the bright lights of the medical bay. Dr. Alex Turner was there immediately, checking her vital signs. Welcome back, Lieutenant. You gave us quite a scare. Kate tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Turner helped her drink water, small sips until her voice returned. Earth? She managed to ask. Safe. The Krell sued for peace, 6 days after you destroyed their fleet. You did it. Kate. You saved billions of lives. The words washed over her. But Kate felt disconnected from them. She had been ready to die. She had made peace with it. Coming back to life felt strange, like waking from a dream she couldn't quite remember. How? Kate asked. My oxygen was gone. Turner explained about the hull section, the venting atmosphere, the impossible alignment that had kept her alive. As he spoke, Kate realized she had been saved by the same debris field that nearly killed her. The destroyed ships, the frozen bodies, the wreckage of humanity's last stand. All of it had conspired to give her one more chance at life. The Phoenix is taking us back to Earth. Turner continued. We should arrive in 4 days. There are a lot of people waiting to meet you. Kate spent those 4 days recovering. Her body slowly healed from the radiation exposure and the cold. She ate, slept, and gradually regained her strength. But her mind kept returning to the mission. To Commander Hughes and his final message. To Danny Garcia and his daughter. To Lisa Hayes and her sacrifice. She had survived, but so many others hadn't. That knowledge weighed on her, heavier than any medal or honor could balance. When the Phoenix entered Earth's orbit, Kate was standing. Weak, but standing. Captain Henderson came to the medical bay personally to escort her to the bridge. The entire planet knows what you did, Kate. They're calling you a hero. Kate looked out the viewport at Earth below. Blue and green and beautiful. Home. Safe because one human had refused to let it burn. You destroyed an armada by yourself. You hauled a nuclear bomb 40 kilometers through enemy territory with nothing but a damaged suit and determination. You completed a suicide mission and lived. That's more than doing what needed to be done. That's extraordinary. The shuttle ride to Earth's surface was surreal. News drones followed them down. broadcasting live footage to billions of viewers. When they landed at the military spaceport in North America, crowds lined the streets. Thousands of people holding signs, cheering, crying. Children waved flags. Veterans saluted. Kate's mother was waiting at the landing pad, tears streaming down her face. They embraced, neither able to speak. Words weren't necessary. Kate was home. She was alive. That was miracle enough. The next weeks were a blur. Medical examinations, debriefings, meetings with military commanders and government officials. Everyone wanted to hear her story, to understand how one person had accomplished what entire fleets could not. Kate told them the truth. She had been lucky. Lucky to survive the initial attack. Lucky to find the bomb. Lucky to make it through the debris field. Lucky to position the device correctly. Lucky to be rescued. Luck, not skill, had carried her through. But the officials didn't want to hear about luck. They wanted a hero. And they made her into one. The Terran Star of Valor was presented in a ceremony attended by thousands. News networks ran her suit camera footage on repeat, showing the long drift through space, the careful approach to the Krell fleet, the moment of detonation. Kate accepted the honors because refusing them would dishonor everyone who had died. She wore the medals because they represented all the crew members of Horizon's Edge who didn't come home. She gave speeches because humanity needed to hear that their sacrifice had meaning. But at night, alone in her apartment, Kate struggled. The sounds of the city seemed too loud after weeks in the silence of space. The crowds felt suffocating after the isolation of her mission. She dreamed of floating bodies and frozen faces, of alarms screaming and ships exploding. Dr. Turner referred her to a counselor who specialized in combat trauma. The sessions helped, slowly. Kate learned to live with the memories instead of fighting them. She learned that surviving didn't mean forgetting. And honoring the dead didn't require destroying herself. 6 months after the battle, the Krell formally requested a peace summit. Their new leadership wanted to negotiate terms. They had learned, painfully, that humanity was not a species to be trifled with. One human with a bomb had taught them what entire wars had not. Kate was asked to attend the summit as a representative of Earth. She stood across from Krell diplomats who looked at her with something between fear and respect. These were the same species that had planned to exterminate humanity. Now, they were asking for peace. "We underestimated your kind," one Krell ambassador said through a translator. "We believed you were weak because you valued individual lives. We did not understand that this made you more dangerous, not less. Any species where every individual would sacrifice themselves for the whole cannot be conquered." Kate thought about her response carefully. "We don't want to be your enemies. We never did. But we will not be victims. Attack us again, and you'll learn that I'm not unique. Every human is capable of what I did. Every single one of us will become a weapon if that's what survival requires." The peace treaty was signed that day. The Krell agreed to withdraw from all human territories. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchanges were proposed. The galaxy had a new understanding. Humanity was here to stay, and they would defend their place in the universe with everything they had. A year after the battle, Kate attended the dedication of a memorial built at the coordinates where Horizon's Edge had fallen. Thousands of names were carved into black stone panels. All the people who had died defending humanity's frontier. She placed her hand on Commander Carl Hughes's name, then Danny Garcia's, then Lisa Hayes's. "We remember," she said softly to the memorial. "We'll always remember." Behind her, the rebuilt defense station, Horizon's Edge 2, orbited peacefully. Its weapons were pointed at empty space. The Krell never came back. Neither did any other hostile species. Word had spread through the galaxy about the human who destroyed an armada with nothing but a bomb and determination. Kate returned to Earth and quietly resumed her life. She refused promotion offers and political appointments. She wanted to live, to honor the sacrifice of those who hadn't made it home, to make sure their deaths meant something. She became a teacher, training the next generation of defense station operators. She told them about Horizon's Edge, about the crew who gave everything to buy time for others to escape. She taught them that technology and weapons were important, but determination and sacrifice were what truly protected humanity. 10 years after the battle, Kate stood in her classroom, looking at young cadets eager to serve. The Krell thought they had won, she told them. They destroyed our ships. They killed our people. They counted us as already dead. But they made one critical mistake. What was that, Lieutenant? A cadet asked. Kate smiled. They underestimated what a human will do when pushed too far. They didn't understand that we fight harder when defending others than when defending ourselves. They thought one person couldn't make a difference. They were wrong. She gestured to the window, where Earth turned slowly below the orbital academy. That planet down there is safe because people refuse to surrender. Because Commander Hughes armed a bomb and left instructions. Because Lisa Hayes gave her thruster pack to help a mission she'd never see completed. Because thousands of crew members bought time with their lives. And because you hauled a nuke through a war zone? Another cadet added. I was just the delivery system, Kate said. The real heroes died at their posts. I just finished what they started. Remember that when you're out there on the frontier, you're not just defending space stations or trade routes. You're defending every human life, every human dream, every human future. That's worth any sacrifice. The cadets nodded, understanding beginning to dawn in their eyes. This was the legacy of Horizon's Edge. This was what Kate Morrison had taught the galaxy. Humanity would not be victims. Humanity would not surrender. Push them far enough, and they would push back with everything they had. One person could change history. One bomb could save billions. One act of courage could echo through the ages. Kate Morrison had been unarmed. So was the nuke she hauled over Rex. But together, they had won a war and secured humanity's place among the stars. That was her legacy. That was humanity's truth, and the galaxy would remember it forever. As they removed Kate's helmet, Turner saw the leak near the collar. He examined it closely, then looked at the hull section the recovery team had brought with them for analysis. His eyes widened as he understood. That hull section was venting atmosphere. The leak in her suit was positioned perfectly to capture it. She's been breathing, escaping air for 3 weeks. The odds of this happening are, I don't even know. It's impossible. But it happened. They moved Kate to a medical bed and began treatment. Warming her body slowly, treating the radiation exposure, monitoring her vital signs. She was alive, but barely. The next few days would determine if she would survive. Turner looked at the damaged EVA suit, at the small leak that had saved a life, at the woman who had destroyed an armada and somehow lived to tell about it. This was going to be one hell of a report. Ship tumbled past, its hull torn open, its crew dead. Tell my mom I'm sorry I won't make it home. Tell her I made it count. Tell her humanity is safe. She took a breath, her oxygen meter showing 15 minutes now. To any Krell listening to this message, you made a mistake. You thought humans were weak. You thought we would surrender. You were wrong. We will never stop fighting. We will never give up. Remember this day. Remember what happens when you threaten Earth. Kate closed the channel and settled back against the hull section. The debris field around her was settling now, pieces finding their final positions. In the distance, the last Krell ships were jumping to hyperspace, fleeing from the graveyard they had helped create. She had done it. One human, unarmed and alone, had destroyed the greatest military force ever assembled against humanity. The Krell would spread this story. Other alien species would hear about it. They would know that humans were dangerous, that pushing humanity too far meant extinction. 10 minutes of oxygen left. Kate closed her eyes, exhausted beyond measure. Earth was safe. That was all that mattered. 4 minutes. Kate watched through a gap in the hull section as alien fighters approached her bomb. 3 minutes 30 seconds. The fighters were scanning it now, their sensors active. 3 minutes. They had detected the active reactor core. Alarms began sounding across the Krell fleet. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. The fighters opened fire, trying to destroy the bomb, but it was too late. The device's shielding absorbed the weapon's fire. The countdown continued. Man was still fighting. One human was bringing death to their doorstep. They would learn that humanity didn't surrender. Humanity didn't break. Humanity hit back. 15 kilometers to go. Kate checked the bomb's status. Everything was green. The device was ready. All it needed was to be armed and positioned. 5 minutes after activation, it would explode with enough force to crack a moon. The Krell fleet was close now. Kate could see their ships on her helmet display, clustered together in a tight formation. Over 200 vessels. The largest concentration of Krell military power ever assembled. They were preparing for the final assault on Earth, confident that nothing could stop them. Kate smiled inside her helmet. They were about to learn why you never underestimate humanity. Never count them out. Never assume victory until every last human is dead. And even then, be careful. Because humans have a habit of coming back from the grave to haunt their enemies. 8 looked back at the station one last time. Horizon's Edge had been humanity's furthest outpost, a symbol of human expansion into the galaxy. Now, it was a tomb. Everyone she knew was dead. Everything she had worked for was destroyed, but the war wasn't over yet. Not while she still breathed. Not while she could still move. Not while she had a chance to make the Krell pay for what they had done. Kate fired her thrusters in a short burst, pushing herself and the bomb toward the debris field. Around her floated the remains of human ships. The destroyer, Liberty, drifted past. Its hull split open, its crew dead at their stations. The carrier Washington lay in pieces, its fighter bays empty and dark. She had 40 kilometers to cross. 3 hours of oxygen, 1 bomb, and a galaxy that needed to learn that humanity didn't surrender. Humanity fought back. Always. Kate Morrison was unarmed. So was the nuke she hauled over Rex. But she was going to win this war anyway.